Ever get that feeling? Like you're just drowning in information.
Oh, absolutely.
We're bombarded with news and opinions and facts from every direction these days. So today we're diving into someone who can help us navigate that chaos.
Okay.
Rudolf Carnap,
Ooh, interesting.
a philosopher whose ideas are surprisingly relevant to our information-saturated world.
You might not know his name, but Carnap's work is like a mental toolkit for the 21st century.
I like that.
He was all about building better ways to think,
Okay.
especially when it comes to logic, science, and how language shapes our understanding.
So he's thinking about thinking.
He is.
Meta?
It is meta, yeah. He was a key figure in the logical positivism movement.
Logical positivism. That sounds intense.
It does have a kind of dramatic ring to it.
But I guess it makes sense
Yeah.
if you're drowning in information.
Right.
You need a life raft built on logic and solid evidence.
Exactly. They were reacting against what they saw as centuries of fuzzy metaphysical thinking. For them, philosophy needed to be grounded in the clarity of science and observation.
So instead of debating endlessly about the meaning of life,
Right.
Carnap wanted to make sure we were even asking the right questions in the first place.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
He called this approach conceptual engineering.
Okay?
It's like he's saying, before we try to solve philosophical problems,
Yeah.
let's build better tools for thinking about them.
I like that. So instead of just grabbing any old wrench,
Right.
Carnap is helping us design precision instruments for our minds.
Yeah. Yeah.
What kind of problems did he think we could tackle with these tools?
Well, he believed a lot of philosophical debates were actually just linguistic muddles.
Oh, okay.
We get tangled up in arguments
Yeah.
because we're not using language precisely enough.
So it's like we're trying to build a house with a hammer, but no blueprints?
Perfect analogy. Carnap believed that by clarifying our concepts
Okay.
and using more precise language, we could avoid those philosophical dead ends.
That's so relevant today. It feels like everyone's talking past each other online,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to complex issues.
It really does.
Maybe we need a dose of Carnapian conceptual engineering
I think so.
to get everyone on the same page.
I think he'd agree with you there. And here's another Carnapian idea that might help.
Okay.
He didn't think we were stuck with pre-existing concepts.
Okay.
He believed we had the power to shape our own understanding
Oh, interesting.
by creating and refining the tools we use to think.
So we're not just passive recipients of knowledge.
Right.
We're actively constructing it. That's a really empowering idea.
Absolutely.
I like that.
Carnap would say we're all philosophical architects, in a way,
Okay.
designing the frameworks for how we understand the world.
Cool.
And that brings us to another big part of Carnap's work,
Okay.
his critique of metaphysics.
Okay, so metaphysics, isn't that basically philosophy that deals with big, abstract concepts
You got it.
like existence, reality, and all that?
And Carnap was pretty skeptical of much of traditional metaphysics.
Really?
He saw it as a distraction from genuine knowledge.
So he was like, less talk about the nature of being,
Yeah.
more focus on what we can observe and test.
Exactly. He thought we should base our knowledge on evidence and logic,
Yeah.
not just abstract speculation.
But didn't he also recognize that some metaphysical thinkers had actually made important contributions?
He did.
Like, didn't he mention Aristotle and Kant?
He acknowledged that they had valuable insights,
Okay.
but he believed their work needed to be reinterpreted
Yeah.
through the lens of scientific knowledge.
It's like he's saying, okay, great ideas,
Right.
but let's see how they hold up in the real world
Yes.
under the microscope of scientific scrutiny.
That's a great way to think about it. And that leads us to another key concept in Carnap's thinking,
Right?
the idea of verification.
Okay.
Early on, he believed that scientific statements had to be conclusively proven by observation.
But wait,
Yeah.
how can you definitively prove a theory?
Right.
That applies to an infinite number of cases. That seems pretty impossible.
You're right.
Yeah.
And Carnap realized this.
Right.
He actually acknowledged the limitations of strict verification.
Interesting.
Well, before other philosophers who are often credited with this insight,
So what did he propose instead?
he shifted towards the concept of confirmation.
Okay.
It's the idea that evidence can strengthen our belief in a theory,
Yeah.
even if it can't provide absolute proof.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
It's like how we make decisions in everyday life.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
We rarely have perfect information,
Right.
but we still have to act based on what seems most likely.
Exactly. And Carnap's emphasis on confirmation is incredibly relevant to how we navigate the constant stream of information today.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We have to assess evidence,
Yeah.
weigh probabilities,
Mhm.
and make decisions based on what seems most strongly confirmed.
So Carnap is basically giving us a framework for critical thinking in the information age.
I think that's a great way to put it.
It's like he's saying, don't just accept what you see at face value.
Right.
Look for the evidence, consider the sources,
Yeah.
and make informed judgments.
That's a great distillation of his thinking. And this emphasis on evidence and reasoning connects to another fascinating aspect of Carnap's work, his focus on structure.
Okay, so what did he mean by structure? Did he just like organizing his bookshelves really neatly?
Well, maybe he did.
I mean, I would.
But in his philosophical work, structure had a much deeper meaning.
Okay.
He was captivated by the idea that true knowledge is about understanding relationships and patterns, not about the essence of things.
So instead of getting bogged down in questions of what something is ultimately made of,
Right.
he was more interested in how it connects to other things,
Exactly.
how it fits into a system.
Precisely. For Carnap, the focus was on relationships, connections, and the patterns that emerge from those connections.
Okay.
And he saw logic and mathematics as powerful tools for representing those structures.
That makes sense. It's like the difference between appreciating the blueprint of a house and just focusing on the individual bricks.
A perfect analogy. And to give a more concrete example, think of different models in mathematics.
Okay.
They can represent the same underlying structure,
Oh.
even if they use different symbols or elements.
So it's like recognizing the same melody played in different keys or on different instruments.
Yes.
It's the underlying pattern that matters.
Exactly. And this focus on structure is incredibly relevant to how we make sense of the world today.
How so?
We're constantly bombarded with information,
Yeah.
but it's often fragmented and disconnected.
It's true.
Carnap's work encourages us to look for the underlying patterns, the connections that help us make sense of the chaos.
It's like he's giving us a mental map for navigating the information landscape.
Yeah.
So we've talked about conceptual engineering,
Yes.
the critique of metaphysics,
Right.
the shift to confirmation, and the importance of structure.
Yes.
What other key ideas should we explore in the Carnapian universe?
Well, we can't leave out his work on language.
Okay.
Initially, Carnap was all about syntax,
Okay.
the rules for how we put words together. But he eventually shifted his focus to semantics,
Semantics.
the meaning of language.
So he went from being the grammar police
Uh-huh.
to being a dictionary editor.
That's a fun way to think about it. It was a pretty significant shift.
Okay.
He realized that understanding meaning was crucial for clarifying philosophical concepts and for building his logical frameworks.
So he started incorporating ideas about truth and meaning into his systems.
He did. And he even adopted some ideas from a logician named Alfred Tarski,
Oh,
who developed a rigorous way of defining truth in formal languages.
wow.
But Carnap also held on to his own principle of tolerance,
Okay.
allowing for different ways of constructing and interpreting language.
It sounds like he was walking a tightrope,
Yeah,
trying to be precise about meaning
right.
while also allowing for flexibility in how we use language.
You got it. And this is where things get really interesting.
Ooh, I like when things get interesting.
Because one of his own students, W.V.O. Quine, challenged some of these ideas in a big way.
Oh, no.
These two had an epic philosophical rivalry
I love a good rivalry.
that pushed the boundaries of thought.
A philosophical clash of the titans. Bring on the drama.
Well, maybe not drama in the Hollywood sense.
Okay.
Definitely a clash of ideas. They debated some fundamental questions
Yeah.
about the nature of language and knowledge.
Like what kind of questions?
One big debate was about ontology,
Ontology.
the study of what exists.
Okay.
Quine was skeptical of Carnap's willingness to accept the existence of abstract objects,
Like what?
like numbers and sets.
Okay.
He thought we should be more grounded in what we can directly observe.
So Quine was more of an empiricist,
Yes.
sticking to what we can experience,
Exactly.
while Carnap was more comfortable with abstract entities, as long as they were part of a logically coherent system.
That's a great way to frame their different perspectives.
Thank you.
And this led to another major debate,
Okay.
this time about the analytic-synthetic distinction.
Okay, I have to admit, that one sounds a bit intimidating.
Yeah.
Can you break it down for us?
Sure. The question is, can we really separate statements that are true by definition
Okay.
from statements that are true based on facts about the world?
That's a tricky one. Like, all bachelors are unmarried
Right.
is true by definition,
Yeah,
but the sky is blue is true based on our observations.
exactly. But Quine argued that this distinction isn't as clear-cut as it seems.
Okay.
He believed that all statements are influenced by both our language
Okay.
and our experience of the world.
So he's saying everything's interconnected, no neat categories. It's like he's throwing a wrench into Carnap's carefully constructed logical system.
You could say that. But even with their disagreements, both Carnap and Quine made huge contributions to our understanding of language, logic, and science.
They pushed each other to think more deeply.
Yeah.
And their debates helped clarify some of the most fundamental questions in philosophy.
I agree.
It's amazing to think that these ideas, debated decades ago,
I know,
are still relevant to how we make sense of the world today.
Absolutely.
It's really cool.
And that's just the beginning. We've only scratched the surface of Carnap's incredible body of work.
Oh.
There's so much more to explore.
Let's do it.
Including his groundbreaking work on inductive logic,
Okay.
which has had a profound impact on fields like artificial intelligence and data science.
Hold on. We're going from philosophy to artificial intelligence.
We are.
Now, that's a transition I didn't see coming.
Yeah.
I can't wait to dive deeper into that connection.
Let's take a moment to digest all this fascinating Carnapian goodness.
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll explore how his ideas continue to shape our world in surprising and powerful ways.
Okay. I'm back and ready for more Carnap. All right. We just left off talking about how his ideas about language and logic led to some pretty heated debates with his own student, W.V.O. Quine.
Right.
And you mentioned that his work on inductive logic has even had an impact on artificial intelligence.
It's true. Carnap was way ahead of his time in so many ways.
Okay.
He even developed a system for formalizing how we reason from evidence to conclusions.
Really?
He called it inductive logic.
Okay.
And it's had a massive influence on how we think about probability and decision-making today.
So he wasn't just analyzing language.
No.
He was trying to understand the very process of how we learn and update our beliefs based on new information.
Exactly. He wanted to create a rigorous framework for inductive reasoning.
Okay.
A way to go beyond just gut feelings and hunches.
That sounds incredibly ambitious. But how do you even begin to formalize something as complex as human reasoning?
Well, Carnap drew inspiration from mathematics and probability theory.
Right.
He was fascinated by the idea of assigning probabilities to different beliefs
Mm-hmm.
and then updating those probabilities as we gather more evidence.
It's like starting with a hypothesis.
Right.
And then adjusting our confidence level as we collect more data.
That's a great way to put it. And this approach has become incredibly influential in fields like artificial intelligence,
Oh, wow.
where machines are constantly learning and adapting based on new information.
So those self-driving cars
Yeah,
and those algorithms that recommend what to watch next,
right.
they're all using principles that can be traced back to Carnap's work.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
His ideas about inductive logic have laid the groundwork for some of the most cutting-edge technologies we have today.
It's like he's the philosophical godfather of the information age.
I love that.
Now, I know we have to keep moving,
Okay.
but I'm curious about something.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about Carnap's skepticism of traditional metaphysics.
Right?
Did he completely reject all metaphysical ideas?
That's a great question. Carnap wasn't opposed to thinking about big abstract concepts. He just believed that we should approach them with the same rigor and clarity that we apply to scientific questions.
Okay.
He even developed a fascinating technique for dealing with theoretical terms in science.
Interesting.
Terms that refer to things we can't directly observe.
Like what kind of terms?
Think of things like electrons or quarks in physics.
Right.
We can't see these particles directly,
Yeah.
but we infer their existence based on their effects.
So how did Carnap deal with this challenge? Did he say we should just throw out all those unobservable entities?
Not at all.
Okay.
He actually came up with a clever way to reinterpret theoretical statements
Okay.
using something called the Ramsey sentence approach.
Ramsey sentence approach.
It's a bit technical,
Okay.
but the basic idea is to translate statements about unobservable entities into statements about observable phenomena.
So instead of saying electrons exist, we could say something like, if we perform this experiment, we'll observe these particular results. And those results are consistent with the existence of entities that we call electrons.
Exactly. It's a way of grounding our theoretical claims in observable evidence,
Oh.
even when we're dealing with things we can't directly see or touch.
That's pretty ingenious.
Yeah.
It's like Carnap is saying, we don't have to abandon metaphysics altogether,
Right.
but we do need to make sure it's anchored in the real world.
That's a great way to summarize his approach. And what's remarkable is that This technique has had applications beyond just science.
Oh, really?
Philosophers have used Ramsey sentences to analyze all sorts of concepts.
Like what?
From free will to moral responsibility.
It's like he's giving us a new lens through which to view some of the most fundamental questions in philosophy.
I like that.
Now, I know Carnap's career spanned decades.
Yeah.
And he wrote extensively on a wide range of topics.
He did.
Is there anything else from his later work that you think is particularly relevant to our conversation today?
Absolutely. In the 1950s, Carnap was invited to contribute to a book about the logical positivism movement.
Okay.
He wrote a detailed autobiography, reflecting on his intellectual journey and engaging with criticisms of his work.
It's like he was giving us a behind-the-scenes look at how his ideas evolved over time.
Exactly. And he didn't shy away from controversy.
Okay.
He addressed head-on some of the key challenges that had been raised against logical positivism.
Like what?
For example, some critics argued that the movement was too focused on science.
Okay.
And neglected other important aspects of human experience.
Okay.
Like art, morality, and spirituality.
So they were saying that logical positivism was too narrow in its view of what counts as meaningful.
That's one way to put it.
Okay.
And Carnap took these criticisms seriously.
Good.
He acknowledged that there are different ways of understanding and engaging with the world.
Yeah.
He emphasized that while science is a powerful tool for understanding the natural world, it's not the only tool.
It's like he was saying, yes, we need logic and evidence, but we also need to make space for other forms of human expression and understanding.
That's a nuanced and insightful way to capture his perspective.
Well, thank you.
And it shows that Carnap wasn't a rigid dogmatist.
Oh.
He was willing to adapt and refine his views as he encountered new challenges and perspectives.
It's inspiring to see a thinker who's both rigorous and open-minded.
It is.
It reminds us that intellectual growth is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
And that we should always be willing to question our own assumptions.
Well said. And speaking of questioning assumptions,
yeah,
that brings us back to Carnap's legendary debates with W.V.O. Quine.
Oh, okay.
We talked earlier about their disagreements on ontology and the analytic-synthetic distinction.
Right.
Did they ever find any common ground?
That's what I'm wondering. They seem to have such fundamentally different views.
It's true that they had some deep philosophical differences.
Yeah.
But even with those disagreements, they maintained a mutual respect and continued to engage with each other's ideas throughout their careers.
It sounds like they were able to have a productive and respectful dialogue.
They were.
Even when they disagreed on fundamental issues.
Yeah.
We could probably learn a lot from that kind of intellectual engagement today.
I couldn't agree more. Their debates are a testament to the power of civil discourse and the importance of engaging with different perspectives.
Yes.
Even when those perspectives challenge our own deeply held beliefs.
It's a reminder that intellectual humility is just as important as intellectual rigor.
I like that.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
But I feel like we've only just begun to explore the richness and depth of Carnap's work.
Oh, there's always more to discover.
What are some of the key takeaways that you hope listeners will glean from this deep dive?
Well, I think one of the most important messages from Carnap is that language matters. The way we frame our thoughts, the concepts we use, and the words we choose all have a profound impact on how we understand the world.
It's like he's giving us a toolkit for thinking more clearly, more precisely, and more responsibly about the information we encounter.
Exactly. And by becoming more aware of how language works, we can become more critical thinkers, more effective communicators, and more discerning consumers of information.
Those are skills that are more essential than ever in today's world.
I agree.
We're constantly bombarded with messages, opinions, and claims.
I know, it's overwhelming.
And it can be hard to sift through the noise and find the signal.
Absolutely. Carnap's work gives us a framework for evaluating information, for distinguishing sense from nonsense, and for constructing our own understanding of the world based on evidence and reason.
It's like he's saying, don't just accept what you read or hear blindly. Question assumptions, clarify meanings, and demand evidence.
That's a great summation of his approach. And another key takeaway from Carnap is that we're not just passive recipients of knowledge. We actively participate in constructing it through our choices, our actions, and our interactions with the world.
That's empowering to think that we have agency in shaping our own understanding.
It is.
It's not just something that's handed down to us.
Right.
We're active participants in the process.
Precisely. And that reminds us that knowledge is not static.
Okay.
It's constantly evolving as we gather new information, refine our concepts, and build better tools for thinking.
It's a continuous process of exploration, experimentation, and refinement.
Well said.
Yeah.
And I think Carnap would be thrilled to see how his ideas are still inspiring philosophers, scientists, and anyone who's curious about how we make sense of the world.
That's amazing.
His work is a testament to the enduring power of human reason to illuminate even the most complex and challenging questions.
And on that note, I think we're ready for the final part of our deep dive into the world of Rudolf Carnap. Wow, what a journey.
I know, it's amazing.
We've covered everything from conceptual engineering to the philosophy of science, from debates about metaphysics to the foundations of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's really incredible how much ground we've covered.
I keep thinking about how Carnap's work, which might seem pretty abstract at first glance,
Right.
is actually deeply relevant to the challenges we face today.
Absolutely.
Like, how can we use his ideas to navigate this overwhelming information landscape?
It's a crucial question, and one thing Carnap's work highlights is the power of clear, precise language.
Okay.
In a world where misinformation spreads like wildfire, we need to be more careful than ever about the words we use and the claims we make.
It's like he's giving us a BS detector for the digital age.
Exactly.
I like it.
He encourages us to ask, what exactly do you mean by that? To demand evidence and to be wary of vague or emotionally charged language.
So the next time I see a clickbait headline
Right?
or a heated argument on social media, I can channel my inner Carnap and say, hold on, let's break this down and see if there's any substance to these claims.
That's the spirit.
Thanks.
And remember Carnap's emphasis on confirmation.
Right.
We should be looking for evidence that supports or refutes claims, not just accepting things at face value.
It's like he's saying, don't just blindly follow the crowd.
Yeah.
Think for yourself.
Exactly.
Evaluate the evidence and form your own conclusions.
And don't forget about Carnap's focus on structure.
Oh, right. Yeah.
In a world of fragmented information,
Yeah.
it's more important than ever to be able to connect the dots, to see the bigger picture, and to understand how different pieces of information relate to each other.
It's like we need to become pattern detectives.
Yes.
Looking for the underlying structures that make sense of the chaos.
Precisely.
I like it.
And Carnap gives us the tools to do just that.
Okay.
He shows us the power of logic, of careful analysis, and of building systems that help us organize and understand complex information.
So Carnap isn't just giving us abstract philosophical theories. He's equipping us with practical skills for navigating the challenges of the 21st century.
That's a great way to put it. And here's another powerful idea from Carnap that we should carry with us.
Okay.
Remember how he emphasized that we're not just passive recipients of knowledge, but active participants in constructing it.
That's right. It's empowering to think that we have a role to play in shaping our own understanding of the world.
It is. And it reminds us that knowledge is not something static and fixed.
Okay.
It's constantly evolving as we ask new questions, gather new evidence, and refine our ways of thinking.
It's a call to be lifelong learners.
Yes.
To be curious, to be skeptical.
Exactly.
And to never stop exploring.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think Carnap would be thrilled to see how his ideas are being applied to new challenges and new domains, from artificial intelligence to ethics to the future of education.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Rudolf Carnap, what's one key takeaway that you hope listeners will remember?
For me, it's this. Carnap reminds us that even in a world that can feel increasingly complex and chaotic, we have the power to think clearly, to make sense of information, and to build a more rational and humane future.
That's a powerful and inspiring message. And I think it's the perfect note to end on.
I agree.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through the mind of one of the 20th century's most influential thinkers.
It's been a pleasure. And to our listeners, we encourage you to keep diving deep.
Yeah?
Keep questioning.
Keep exploring.
And keep those minds engaged.